In the last video, we talked about how your current setup can be costing you money, trust, and authority. But now the question becomes, what do I actually need? Because this is where most business owners get stuck. They know their content needs to look better. They know their audio needs to sound better. They know their setup needs to be more intentional. Then they go online, search for gear, and get hit with 1,000 different cameras, lenses, microphone, lights, tripod switchers, and accessories. And now they're even more confused than when they started. One person tells them to buy a camera. Another person tells them to use their phone. Another person tells them they need a full studio. Another person tells them gear doesn't matter at all. And that confusion is exactly why most people are either buying nothing or they waste thousands upon thousands of dollars buying the wrong things. So in this video, I'm going to simplify it. I'm going to introduce you to the gear you actually need based on where you are right now. That's not based on hype. That's not based on what looks cool. That's not based on what some random creator online is using. This is based on your current budget, your content goals, and the type of setup you're trying to build. I'm also giving you the $1 Million Creator gear list, which is my recommended gear list for cameras, lenses, lights, mics, audio, switchers, and accessories. Practically everything you need to start building your content command center, your in-home studio setup. But I want you to understand this before you look at the list. The goal is not to buy everything. The goal is to know what level you're at. What do you need first and what can wait? Because the right gear in the right order will help you create faster, look more professional, and build your media machine without wasting money. So let's break this down into 3 levels. Level 1, you have absolutely no money to invest. Level 2, you have some money to invest. And level 3, you're ready to make a serious investment into your studio setup. By the end of this video, you should know exactly where you are, what gear makes sense for you, and what your next move should be. So let's dive into it. Level 1 is if you have no money to invest right now. I want to be very clear with you. If you have absolutely no money to invest into your content, your equipment, your image, your brand, then honestly, $1 Million Creator is probably not for you just yet. And I do not say that to discourage you. I say that because I want you to understand the level of intention we are building with. $1 Million Creator is not about casually posting videos online. This is about building your brand authority. This is about creating a media machine around your business. This is about showing up at a level where your content, your message, your image, and your setup all work together to build trust. So if you're not willing to invest anything into that, then the real issue is probably not the camera. It's probably not the lens. It's probably not the light. It's probably not even the microphone. It is the level of seriousness behind what you're building. Because the truth is, even if I gave you the best camera, the best lens, the best lights, and the best microphones, you're not serious about the purpose behind your content. The gear is not going to save you. The gear is just a tool. The setup is just a tool, but the tool only works when there is intention behind it. And one of the easiest ways to see what someone values is to look at what they're willing to invest into. Where your money goes shows where your heart is. So if you're building a business, building a brand, trying to sell your knowledge, your service, your coaching, your course, or your offer, but you're not willing to invest anything, then that is something you need to look at. Because your brand is not just what you say, your brand is how people experience you. Now, with that being said, I also understand that not everyone is at the same level right now. Maybe you're early, maybe you're getting started, maybe right now you do not want the lack of a camera, lens, lights, or a full setup be the thing that stops you from creating. And if that's where you are, then yes, you can start with your iPhone. But I want you to understand something. Your iPhone is the starting point. It is not the standard we're building towards. The goal is not to stay there forever. The goal is to use what you have with intention while you work your way into a better setup. So if all you have right now is your iPhone, then use it the right way. Set your phone to 4K, record at 24 frames per second, use the back camera if you can, put the phone on a tripod or somewhere stable, do not hold it in your hand, do not record from your laptop, do not shoot from a low angle, put the camera at eye level so your shot feels clean and professional. Make sure your face is lit. Face a window if you don't have lights yet. Don't put the window behind you. Always shoot with the light. Always shoot with the sun, not against it. Clean up the background, remove anything distracting from the frame, and record in the quietest room you can. That is how you make your iPhone work. But if you can only make one small investment, the investment I would make is audio. I would look at something like the DJI Mic 2s or the DJI Mic 3s because audio is one of the fastest ways to make your content feel more professional. Bad audio will make good content feel cheap. Clean audio will make simple content feel more professional. So at level 1, if you truly have no money, start with your iPhone, use it with intention. And as soon as you can make one investment, invest into a proper mic. But the goal is to get serious, create momentum, and begin investing into the setup that matches the brand you're trying to build. Level 2 is if you have some money to invest. Now, let me be clear when I say some money. I'm not talking about buying random cheap gear online and hoping it works. For a basic professional starter kit, you are realistically looking around $5,000 minimum, and that is bare bones. This is what I would call the $1 Million Creator Starter Kit. This is the setup that gets my stamp of approval. Not because I saw someone else talk about it online, not because it looks cool, not because it's trendy, but because this is the type of equipment I've battle tested in the field for years. This is the gear I've used around clients, real productions, real podcasts, real course shoots, real events, and real content days. So instead of watching 50 YouTube videos, getting overwhelmed, and trying to piece together a setup from random opinions, I'm giving you the basics that I can actually put my name behind. This is equipment that works. This is equipment that makes sense together. This is equipment that gives you a real foundation to start building your content command center. I'm talking about one camera, one lens, one professional microphone, one audio interface, one switcher, one dedicated light, one memory card, one tripod, and the basic cable, stands, storage, and accessories needed to make everything actually work. That is not a dream studio. That is not the full $1 Million Creator Command Center. This is the starter kit. This is the level where you're saying, hey, I'm serious about my brand. I'm serious about how I show up. I'm serious about creating content that looks and sounds professional. So for the camera, I would recommend something like the Sony A74 or the Sony FX30. The Sony A74 is great if you want a hybrid camera that can shoot high quality video and some solid photos. The FX30 is great if you're focused more on video and something built more for content creation and production. Now, what lens do you get? Depending on your space, I would look at something like the Tamron 17 to 28 millimeter or the Tamron 28 to 75 millimeter. If you are in a tight room and you really don't have a lot of distance between you and the camera, then the 17 to 28 gives you a wider shot. If you have more space and want a cleaner, more versatile look, the 28 to 75 gives you more flexibility. This is important because the lens controls a lot of the look. The camera body matters, but the lens affects how the image feels. It affects the framing. It affects how much of the room people see. It affects the background. It affects how premium the shot looks. So don't just think, I need a camera. You need the right camera and the right lens for your space. Then you need audio. And this is where I don't want you playing around. If you're building a serious brand, you need clean audio. You can have a great camera, a great lens, a nice background, but if your audio sounds bad, the content feels cheap. So for audio, you have two main routes. You can go with a professional podcast style microphone like the Shure SM7DB. This is great if you're recording at a desk, doing podcast style content, recording course videos, doing webinars, or creating content where you're sitting in one place. But if you're going to use this mic, you also need an audio interface. The microphone by itself is not the whole setup, unless you get the FX30 where you're able to connect this mic directly to it. But that's a conversation for later in the course. I'll break down why you can do that, but why I recommend not to do that. Get the audio interface. you need a way to properly capture that audio. You can use something like the Rodecaster Pro 2 if you want a stronger podcast and content workflow, or you can use something that's simple like a Focusrite Scarlet if you want something more straightforward. The Rodecaster Pro 2 gives you more control and more room to grow, especially if you're thinking about podcasts, multiple mics, or more of a complete content setup. The Focusrite is more basic, but it can still get the job done if you just need a clean way to connect your mic to your computer. The other route is wireless mics. Something like the DJI Mic 2s or the DJI Mic 3s can work great if you're doing head talking videos, coaching content, behind the scenes content, or anything where you want the microphone to be simple, clean, and easy to use. The main thing is this: don't rely on your camera microphone. Don't rely on your laptop microphone. Do not spend thousands of dollars on a camera setup and then let the audio be the weakest part of the content. Remember, your voice carries the message, your voice carries the authority, your voice carries the value. So the audio needs to be clean. Then you need a switcher. Only if you guys are planning to have a multi-cam setup. For example, I have camera number 1 and I have camera number 2. This is the best way to record content because in the making of this video, I've made a lot of mistakes that you guys wouldn't even notice. You guys think I made this whole video at one take, which is a lie. I didn't do that. Every single time I cut to this camera angle is because there's a mistake that I made or a part that I chopped off, and I want to make it feel natural. And the best way to make videos feel natural is having a multicam setup. If you guys are thinking about doing a multicam setup, like I said, highly encourage it. I would recommend you guys getting a switcher. For the starter kit, I would recommend something like the Blackmagic ATEM Mini Pro ISO. We're not just building a setup for one random video. We're building towards a content command center. A switcher helps you create a cleaner workflow, especially if you eventually want to record podcasts, live streams, Zoom calls, multi-camera content, or record straight into a cleaner system. It gives you room to grow. So even though this is a starter kit, we're thinking like business owners building infrastructure. Then you need lighting. For the basic starter kit, you need at least one real key light. You have two routes here. You can go with something like the Amaran 60 XS with the Aperture dome if you want more traditional key light setup with a softer and more professional look. Or you can go with something like the Amaran Verge Max LED, which is a simpler lighting option that is usually around like the $200 range. The point is this: you need a dedicated light source, not your ceiling light, not just whatever lamp is in the room, not just hoping the sun hits the window perfectly. I'm talking about a dedicated light source that gives you consistency. Because if you're serious about creating content, your setup cannot look different every time you hit record because the weather changed, the sun moved, or the room lighting is bad. Then you need an actual memory card. I personally recommend the SanDisk 512 gigabyte card because once you start recording 4K content, you don't want to run out of space every few minutes. This is one of those small things that people forget about. You know, they buy a camera, they buy the lens, and then they realize they still need the memory card to actually record what they want to record. So make sure you have a memory card that can handle your footage. Then you need stability. That means a tripod, a desk mount, a camera mount, a light stand, whatever you need to keep the setup locked in. You should not have to rebuild everything from scratch every time you record. Your camera should have a place. Your light should have a place. Your microphone should have a place. Your setup should feel like something you can turn on and use, not something that takes you an hour to figure out every time. And then you need the small pieces that no one thinks about until they need them. You know, I'm talking about the HDMI cables, the power cables, the adapters, extra batteries, SSDs, hard drives, all the little accessories that make the whole setup actually work. That is why I say around $5,000 is the bare minimum. The content setup is not just the camera. It's the camera, the lens, the mic, the interfaces, the switchers, the lights, the memory cards, the storage, the stability, in tripods, and the workflow. If one of those pieces is missing, the setup can still fall apart. This is not the full studio yet, but this is the basic professional setup for someone who is serious about building their brand with authority. Level 3 is the full pro setup. This is what I cover deeper inside the paid $1 million creator course. At this level, we're not just talking about a starter kit anymore. We're talking about the full-blown professional studio setup with all the bells and whistles. And just to be clear, this level is going to run you over $20,000. Not because we're trying to buy expensive gear just to buy expensive gear, but because at this level, you are no longer building a basic content setup. You are building an infrastructure. You're building the system that allows your business to create media on demand. You can learn the system and build it yourself, or you can have someone who already understands the systems build it with you or for you. That is why I have different levels of support. If you want to learn how to do it yourself, that is what the full $1 million creator course is for. If you want personal guidance and a custom roadmap for your specific space, that is where the private mentorship comes in. And if you want the highest level of implementation, where I help design the setup, recommend the right equipment, fly out, build it, dial in the cameras, the lightings, the audios, and the workflows, then that is the done for you studio build out. That way, you're not left guessing. The real cost is not just the gear. The real cost is buying the wrong gear, setting it up wrong, not knowing how to use it, having a setup that looks good on paper, but doesn't actually work day to day. The person who understands that media is not just content anymore. It is part of the business. It is part of the sales process. It's part of the brand. It's part of the authority. If you're at that level, the question is not, should I invest into media? The question is, how do I build this the right way? Because your in-home studio setup is the first step to building your own in-house media production team. Before we get into the team, before we get into editing, before we get into content strategies, before we get into how to communicate on these platforms, you need a solid base. You need to get familiar with the cameras. You need to understand the equipment. You need a place where you can sit down, turn everything on, and create whenever the thought hits. That is the first step. Invest into the setup. Build the command center. Create the environment that makes content easier to produce, because once you have that foundation in place, then we can start going deeper into the strategy, the messaging, the team, the workflows, and the full media machine. But it starts here. Get the right gear, build the right setup, and stop treating your content like an afterthought.